Hi, my name is Candace, and the article that I chose to read and talk about today is called Teaching Geography Using Poetry. This article talked a lot about how teachers can use poetry to integrate language arts and geography all together, and how writing poetry brings out creativity within the student and provides an interesting approach to teaching geography topics to the students and motivates them to learn more about geography instead of just boring them by reading a text in the book about geography. The article also talked about how poetry can be used to provide geographic vocab or to present descriptions related to geography, and it talks about how poetry can create more time and opportunities for geography and social studies to be involved within the day or within the week if teachers are able to incorporate some social studies aspects, specifically geography in this article. If they are able to use that with their language arts time, then they can get more social studies for their students, because it's also important, even though it's not tested. I feel like it's important for the students to know these types of things. The article gave a lot of suggestions for teachers to teach, like on how to teach their students about poetry, but also incorporating geography in with it during language arts. And two of the things that really stood out to me was that the teacher reads geography poetry first to the class and describes the basic elements of poetry before the teacher has the students write poems specifically about geography. And then the second suggestion was for the younger kids to provide some structure for the students, but try and let them free write as much as possible, and because that allows them to be creative and it keeps it more interesting for them. If a teacher tells them to do this, this, and this, and write about this, this, and this, then it's not going to be as fun for the student. I came up with a couple of ideas that the article made me think of that I could use in my classroom, and I want to teach about first or second grade, somewhere around there. And so I thought that during language arts time, I could bring up landforms, and when we're talking about major landforms like volcanoes, seas, rivers, canyons, things like that, then we can talk about them and describe them, and then I could have the students draw a picture of whatever landform they want to talk about, and then in the drawing they write their poem, and so they just have to describe the landform. And so that way they are still writing and practicing their poetry, but at the same time they are learning about a landform, which is geography. So I would definitely use that in my classroom. Another way that I think I would really enjoy the students doing is if I read a poem about the Underground Railroad, then the students could, or I could read a book about the Underground Railroad, and then I could have the students write a poem from a person's point of view that was involved in the Underground Railroad. So the students would pretend like they are someone that was in that situation, and they would talk about how they felt during the Underground Railroad or what they saw, or they could pick whatever they want to write about, just as long as they are choosing from a point of view from someone that is going through the Underground Railroad. And then the third activity that I thought would be really good for first graders is when we're talking about weather, and specifically like rain and snow, clouds, just all of that topics about weather in the different descriptions of them. The students could talk about them with using similes and metaphors. So the student could talk about rain and do a simile and come up with a simile that they would like for rain, or they could do it with clouds, and they could also draw a picture and then write the poem in with it. And so that way they are being creative by coming up with their own similes and metaphors, but at the same time we're learning about that in language arts, about similes and metaphors and poetry, but then we bring in weather, which has to deal with geography, and then they can incorporate both. And I just feel like that would be really fun for the students too. A lot of the learning activities that they had in the article, they had examples of that. A lot of them were for a little bit upper elementary, and so I just came up with some that I thought were good for lower elementary, but the article is really good and I liked it, and I definitely see a different aspect of poetry and integrating language arts with geography than I did before reading this article. So, thanks.